Gonna tweet about it. The trifecta. So, last time on A Crown of Cold Iron, the intrepid heroes of Queensboro have finally managed to make it back to their namesake city. The place either of. Are any of y'all actually from here?
I mean, I guess I'm kind of from.
It's complicated.
I'll say Cyrus feels like the most stringent claim to here-ness.
Yeah.
Lexi feels like a
Cyrus is from
toss-up,
here.
Yeah.
and
Because
Auric
where
is.
where are we again? You just said it, and of course my brain was
Oh,
Queensboro.
Queensboro,
Queensboro.
the
Yeah.
city. You're back.
Yes.
And then Auric is dot 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 question mark in a error null.
Yep.
Yeah. I think I grew up in. I've been there long enough to consider it home. So.
So you all are back. You have successfully, really made it through a lot of your dangling plot threads. You have rescued Mort, Cyrus's mysterious missing mentor, who has been gone since. Oh, geez. Before you went to the Raven Palace, and was honestly kind of unapproachable before that. Let's be real. You have successfully rescued him from his imprisonment in the hands of Lord Lambton, the patron who has been sort of threatening Auric in a low key way the whole campaign. You also figured out where all the missing people were going. They were seemingly voluntarily going into Fairy to be infused with Fey magic, which would cure their maladies, but also has made them half Fey changelings. You had what started off as a peaceful, if blustery, conversation with Lambton that ended up turning violent when he noticed some strange connection between Cyrus and his imprisoned Tuathan captive. You all fought the Fey Dragon Lord, the Lord of the River Weir, the River of Mists and Illusions, and you defeated him on his own river when Auric was revealed to be some kind of reincarnation of the long lost human sorcerer king Bran. It's a lot. You thought you
Yeah.
were finally in for a peaceful return to the city, but you forgot that your allies had set off a giant bomb right before you left. So you have returned, and we will set the scene.
I think it's less forgotten, more was like, oh, that was days ago.
I was gonna say, how many weeks have we been in Fairy in real life? Like over
So
a month.
so here's the scenario. So we you all were on the ferry side of the portal. This portal that belonged to this group called the Weirwood that had been co-opted by Lambton's minions, Oryx's cousins. You had driven them off to take the portal, but you had asked the Weirwood for assistance in doing so. Their assistance came in the form of a massive explosion to draw away any extra forces around the building. This worked, sort of, and you all escaped through the portal. So now you are returning, and everybody give me an intelligence check.
Oh, at least this character doesn't have a -1. But I rolled a 2.
Mm,
Dirty 20.
I rolled an 8.
All right. The keen investigative mind of Cyrus
Oh, good.
is the one that catches this.
Good.
This room still kind of smells like a fresh fire. And actually, like a very fresh fire. Cyrus, you don't think you all have been gone more than like an hour or two. Which explains why there are a lot of uniformed Queensboro police officers with weapons drawn pointing them at you. You can see firefighters and what looks like maybe some bomb techs all kind of mingled in the background. And there is a very tense tableau as suddenly dozens of weapons are pointed in your all's direction. A voice yells out, "Hey, wait, who are you? Hands up!"
Hands up, don't shoot.
Cyrus is gonna step forward in non-threatening pose, and he's going to offer up one of his NBI code phrases of there's more going on here. And like, gentlemen, we will be happy to answer all of your questions, but for the immediate moment, these children are in need of support.
So even as you sort of step forward, you see some of the barrels are sort of trailing you. You also see just profound confusion as much as anything right now. So I want 2 rolls. Give me one luck check, and then a persuasion check with advantage. All right. Cyrus is both persuasive and lucky in this moment.
Yeah.
So you're in luck because immediately, like within 10 feet of you, is Captain Avery. And this has been sort of already established. The downside of working for a secret organization is that only so many people can know about your secret passphrases. But Avery is definitely one of them. So Avery, the head of the sort of special crimes unit, the group that... I keep doing that. It's not SCU. I'll think of it later. Anyway, he has sort of the weird contingent of the Queensboro Police, and he recognizes you all. Now, your track record with Avery is a little wonky. He has by now figured out that somebody has impersonated him. Somebody has impersonated him a couple of times.
I thought you already did.
So someone's impersonated him a few times. Several of you showed up on the official record at the site of the very first incident at the Kent building on the campus of Ravensbrook, like forever ago.
Didn't do it.
The only other major, I think, point of interaction is he knows that you all were suddenly put on the team as I have a stubborn dog issue happening. Go potty. Go. 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 He both wants to potty and does not.
It's a really hard decision.
So he knows that you all were involved somehow with what happened at the Hall of Light,
Right.
with the Radiant Dawn and all the shenanigans there. The impression is that you all were somehow positive, and Davis has spoken well of you all. And he's at least enough in the know to recognize an MBI code. So you also, with your persuasion check, you realize that, like, so you all walked out of a magic portal, seemingly out of thin air. Lexi has her giant, what is it, a mall, I think,
Yes.
technically.
Yes.
You have come out with a blackthorn, and a very injured person, and a bunch of strange creatures. And so I think only when you say children does it click for some of them of like, oh, what? You see instant confusion. They don't know what to make of this. And Avery sort of catches himself sooner and says, I think you all are going to have some substantial explaining to do in all of this. I wish Davis
You're
was
absolutely right, Captain. And I recommend we should probably have the embassy as part of the conversations because of everything that's transpired.
Fantastic.
But for right now, while I know it may not look it, all of the kids are from Queensboro and need to be reunited with their families.
He just sort of like lets out a long exhalation, just and all the guns come down. And he says, I know you've got your fancy intelligence countersign nonsense happening, but I'm going to need you all to stay with me until this is wrapped up. And he looks over at one of his lieutenants, who is not Davis, who is conspicuously absent. You have almost always seen Davis in Avery's wake. And he asked the lieutenant to... Oops. To call up Child Protective Services, as well as sort of setting some other things in motion. And he himself dials up the embassy, and you can hear him sort of talking. Apparently does not have a direct line. Is sort of talking through, I think it's Moon Tree and Shrubbery. Yeah. Oh, they're just special investigations. Oh no, Special Crimes Unit. I used both. That's why I'm confused.
SCU is what was in my notes.
So you hear him trying to sort of navigate through Moontree, her sort of high-pitched voice, very distinctive, as she is like 2 feet tall. But eventually her voice sort of fades away. You catch like a little clip of Leon, and then the voice of Lady Bryn. Just out of habit, Vela is calling a number she seems to have on speed dial, which is like Blackthorn family legal representation. just sort of like by default, like whenever this sort of thing happens, she always calls them. Um, so we're going to fast forward a little bit instead of navigating all the minutia of this. So you all end up at a facility you've never been to before. Oh, go
Can I
ahead.
interject one thing?
Yeah.
Cyrus is gonna as surreptitiously as possible, like create a new token and slip it to Mort. Because I want to ask Mort how much the embassy knows and can know about him.
Give me a sleight of hand check. Which sort of token are you making? Oh no. Is this hair? Is this a nail?
Nail.
Fully, like a bunch of these officers watch you just and pull a nail off and hand it to this injured person. And you see like a lot of them kind of like dry heave a little, like, and one does fully throw up. They give you a wider berth after that. So you all are taken to a different facility, and it is very appropriately in the human side of the sort of customs and immigration apparatus that has been built up around the main Queensboro gate. I think Auric, you've popped your head in here, obviously, at least once. Have any of the rest of y'all been in here?
Where are we?
The main Queensboro gate. This is like the portal.
I don't know if we've been to it's not the same place where the ferry where Lady Brent is, right?
No.
No. Okay. I don't think I've been there.
All right.
So Cyrus is like visited,
Yeah.
like, but not in like an official capacity. It was probably like
Yeah.
the family one, like it was like a family like see the cool thing in the city.
You had to take the
Right.
cousins.
Yeah. Lexi probably knows where it is.
There's probably like an informational display, like
Yeah.
a little like Ambassador Llewellyn. There might even be like a little magical hologram of like, hello, I am Ambassador Llewellyn, envoy of the United Parliament of the Fae to the human realms, and allow me to welcome you to a future of friendship. And it's like the giant logo emblazoned on the wall, and it's like a blown up picture of like him shaking hands with like the mayor of Queensboro, but also there's like prime ministers and presidents and everybody all sort of around. Lady Bryn looks mortified in like the next back. There's little like cultural things. It's like, here is common attire for certain groups in fairy, and it's like a beautiful elven dress made of this like magical silk, and then it's just like a pixie sized like leaf skirt. There is exactly one silver rapier like in a place of honor, and there's tourists milling about. You all are not there. That's sort of the normal entrance. You all are deeper inside, and it's sort of a strange combination. It is equal parts like international airport, little bit like just a touch of like medical quarantine, military base, and all of it is run through with supernatural touches. It's not just like mechanical, physical, digital security. You also see a lot of Blackthorn arcana worked all over the place. They locked this place down personally. And there are things that Auric, are you back in your Dragonborn form?
No, no, no.
This is, well, I guess the city would know you in this form, so that's okay. There might be some confusing things happening there. Did Lady Bren sort out your paperwork? Did you actually have her do that?
I don't remember.
I feel like we discussed it and then it didn't actually happen.
That might be true.
That might be the case.
No, I think she did do it. I remember that now. She did kind of sort you out a little bit, even if there's still some like ... question marks in places on your file. But even in your human form, there is a buzz as you walk past some of the wards. This is very much like, it's like, welcome to the human realm. We're so glad you're here. But also, if you're dangerous, our welcome will be short. Short and lasting. So you're sort of walked through these halls, and you're just sort of at the periphery of like the normal official stuff going on. You occasionally see sort of clerks come through with, you know, like big manila envelopes, big sort of tan folders just full of official documents and things. You notice that seems to be a mix. In some places you see just human staff, in some places you see human and fairy staff working together, because it's this sort of a joint effort. But you've been sort of brought back here. The children are being reunited with their parents separately, and there are lots of questions with like child protective services happening, and there's medical exams are starting to take place. Vela's lawyer has met you all at this spot and is just like following in her wake. And is a very sort of plain, unassuming looking man, but wearing a very dark suit. And every time someone like so much as looks at Vela funny, he just like radiates judicial rage. Like, I am going to bury you in paperwork and leave you there to die. His name is Oswald. So you all are led into this back room. So it's the three of you. Mort has kind of like taken up a spot in the corner, kind of like half leaned against the wall in a chair. Vela went to sit sort of beside you, Auric, and Oswald like gently directed her to a different side of the table. So it's like you all on one side, human officials on one side, Lady Bren and Leon on one side, and Vela and Oswald on the other side. This is not quite an interrogation room, but it is in the same family tree.
So is Mort with us?
Mort is sort of leaning back in the corner. He's kind of got like this, like, leaned up against the wall. And you notice that the shadow kind of like, he sort of blends more than necessarily physically makes sense. He's clearly trying to sort of reduce attention.
So, do I have a chance to ask him, kind of on the way over, how much does the embassy know about you, and is it safe for them to know?
So the short answer is that the embassy officially knows very little. Because technically the NBI officially does not know what Mort is. Unofficially, there are certain highly placed administrators who, when they take on their position, get a special meeting with their predecessor and Mort, who just like appears in the middle of the room, and they are told about the centuries old person who apparently helped found the MBI. So officially, he is unknown. The embassy is aware that there is a Tuathan power at work in the city. And I think Lady Bryn has discussed this with you all a little bit. They know something is there. They know that it is not overtly hostile to Fairy, and they know that it is actively working to protect the humans. But Mort also kind of conveys he just seems really tired.
Fair.
But at the same time, there's a dazed quality that you have not really seen before. You sometimes catch him giving Auric weird looks. For someone who always has a plan, it seems remarkably like he has sort of settled into going with the flow. Whatever unfolds.
Okay.
So Captain Avery is still in the mix, but has been like shoved like 4 places down. He went from being like your primary point of contact here, and now there is on the far side where the corner of the table meets with Bryn. There's Bryn here, Leon in the middle, and then Llewellyn. And at the corner, there's like a deputy ambassador of the human world to Fairy, and her and Bryn are talking at the corner, and then like there is a high-ranking NBI official, the kind that like Cyrus doesn't really interact with. The person who mostly goes to meetings as opposed to like interacting with agents. And what looks for all the world like some kind of like military official. There is a tense atmosphere. Other than Lady Bryn and her counterpart kind of muttering to each other, there has not been a lot of conversation. Like, people have sort of appeared with abrupt lack of introduction. They did at least reassure you of like where the kids are and what's happening with them, and they're okay. But it doesn't feel like this is fixed by any means. So the human ambassador leans forward and says, "We need you all to just start from the beginning and tell us everything you can about how we got to here. And what I'm going to say is, tell me what you're leaving out or what you're tweaking. We're not going to recap the entire campaign up to this point. 4 episodes of recap later.
Yeah, seriously. I mean, we've been in Fairy for 3 months, game real time. So I looked it up.
Well, I don't think we need to tell them really anything about, well, maybe we do, about the dungeons, the Raven King's Palace.
No,
Yeah.
probably not about that. I mean, I was more thinking of we heard rumors that there were
Yeah.
children being trafficked into Ferry, and we managed to
Locate them.
locate them. And when we saw one physically being trafficked into Ferry, we followed, which is how we ended up in Ferry. Like, I mean, that's kind of where I would start.
Yeah.
I think Cyrus wants to like kind of like pointedly remind Lady Bryn that like we had raised this suspicion with her
Yes.
when we met with her.
Yes.
And so like and just a like we just I like not to put her on the spot, but just to say like this is the rumor that we were following up on.
Now, I can't remember. Did you all tell her specifically that you were after that, or was it just a rumor in general?
I feel like we did bring the evidence of trafficked children to her.
So, give me a persuasion check to walk the line of like bringing this up and not like
Throwing her
not
under the
making
bus.
it a thing.
Okay. Me?
Yeah. All right. Cyrus's hot dice are back. Yeah, you manage to sort of lay this out, and she sort of confirms that it was sort of at the, the theory phase at that point, and that, and you see Avery sort of acknowledge that there seemed to have been some conversations had, and that information was shared. So it's not like she's not just fully thrown under the bus.
Yeah.
So she can corroborate that you all had, were doing research. The human authorities, once you kind of lay out that you were like actively following sort of an event in motion, they kind of lay off you on that one. It sort of tracks why you would do what you did. But everybody give me an insight check.
Okay.
Fucking 7. Well, I'm glad somebody rolled well.
I see all.
Yep.
You see all things.
So, Lexi, this is just kind of overwhelming.
Yeah.
And I think maybe part of that is because if Lexi has ever been in a situation like this in the past, it's bad. Like, if you're seeing people this many notches above your commanding officer, like, it's a real bad situation. And there's a lot of that energy in the room of like official people officialing.
Yes.
So Cyrus, you get the impression that passing through the portal is only of moderate concern. At least the way to spin it is that you all were actively following this kid who was in need, and the bigger problem is that there was like an unlicensed gate, which means the Weirwood might get to have some interesting conversations if they want it back. So, that's what you gather. Auric, you catch two things. One, no one seems to know Lambton is dead yet, which is good for you all. But the real glaring thing for you is that the questions they are really concerned about are the children.
Mhm.
And honestly, with a 23, Bryn, nobody's being sort of like inhuman about it. Like no one's being sort of cruel. But you get the impression that most of the folks in this room are far more interested in how a bunch of sick human children have shown back up in what to their eyes appears to be as fairies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is their driving concern. What in the world happened? Is it going to happen again? Why did it happen? Who did it? These are all sort of woven into the conversation, but in a subtle way. They're not just like battering you for these answers. In part because I think you all might have spooked them.
Good.
They certainly weren't expecting us to come out of the portal.
I mean, as far as they know, you all are the only humans who have ever come out of the portal to Fairy, or at least one of a very, very, very select few.
Yes.
So, what do you let them know about the children? About what happened?
I think me personally, as little as possible.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to be playing dumb and steering the conversation away from the children, or at least away from what happened to them, and
Plausible deniability.
instead towards just the fact that we went in and got them.
Yeah. Plausible deniability. My mom's new favorite phrase.
So, if that's the tact you're taking, give me either a persuasion or deception check. Because it's a little bit of both.
Well, they're both the same bonus, so let's do a deception. Okay, only a 17.
All right, with a 17, you can't fully downplay it because this is what they're interested in.
Right.
The basics are there. That. Do you all name Lambton in this process?
As much as I want to, I'm not gonna. He's dead. It doesn't matter.
I was gonna
So-
say, I mean, but at the same time, you can throw him under the bus because he's dead and he can't do anything.
True.
Of course, nobody knows he's dead yet. So
Exactly.
So the information that they're taking away here is that an unknown but powerful party in Fairy facilitated these children arriving in Fairy, and somehow caused this transformation. This is... Everyone is very alarmed by this.
Wow.
understandably so.
You see sort of a whole range of like, some of them immediately ask you questions about like, you know, is it reproducible? Is this something they can keep doing? Some of them ask, is it reversible? Can the children be turned back? And of course, a lot of these are questions you all don't necessarily know the answer to.
Yeah. Answer 1, unlikely. Answer 2, unknown.
Do you say anything about sort of the intent of why this happened? Like whether it was good intentions or bad intentions or...
Since I went out of my way to not name Lambton, I don't know if I can explicitly say it was good intentions, but I think I'll try my best to imply that it was not meant in a harmful way.
At least not to the people who did it, or the people, the I don't want to say victims, but the recipients. I mean, because I think of the tree dude, and he fully consented. So
So, this is just sort of the summary of this fairly intense process that takes a while. Um, you get a lot of these questions repeated. You get different folks sort of coming and leaving, sort of hitting the same questions again, and it drags for sure. And even though chronologically it's only been a couple of hours, you all can feel that you've been gone for 3 or 4 days, probably. There is a physical wear that is exhausting. Is there anything you all are trying to interject into the conversation, or anything you're trying to do or get out of it?
I think the main thing we're trying to get out of is not getting charges pressed against us.
Am I being detained?
Am I being detained? I'd like to speak to my lawyer.
There does seem to be an emphasis that you all are not likely to be charged with anything specific.
Yeah. I think Cyrus is probably still just like doing his best to massage the conversation to keep Mort out of it in any way possible.
To be honest, they've barely noticed Mort.
Fair.
They have kind of taken it for granted that Mort is just with you guys. Like, Mort was just part of all of this.
Oh, okay.
And if he looks beat up, it's because this was a difficult experience.
Gotcha.
So, you're not being charged with anything. You're not being held. But there's definite, like, don't leave town energy. And it really only stops because after a couple of hours, I won't make y'all roll for it. I would say that probably Auric would be the one to notice. Some of the wards around the room flicker a little bit. And the door suddenly, like, slams open. Let me find a name. And a man with a very large human man probably in his like early 50s, short dark hair, goatee, dressed in this sort of impeccable outfit that somehow conveys both like the stylishness of like a well-tailored designer suit, but also clearly has elements of like a wizard's robe. He's carrying what you would be forgiven for thinking is a walking stick. You all would guess it is definitely some kind of magic item. And he comes in and he only makes sort of a little gesture. You see like the tail end of it. And the door slams so hard that the handle like dents into the wall. And without any malice, but just infinite confidence and volume, this man says, "Well, I think that's about enough for this conversation. Surely you all have everything you need at this point. My niece and her friends are going to retire to some rest at this point. If you have anything else you need, you can address that to Mr. Oswald. They will don't worry, we'll be in contact. And you can almost see like the force of his personality like pushes everyone in the room just a little bit. And Vela kind of like rolls her eyes and is like, hi, Uncle. And he comes over and smiles and is like, well, how is my favorite niece? We're leaving now. Turns back to the authorities and just sort of like, gently guides her up and walks out, kind of expecting you all to be sort of pulled in his wake.
Right.
Yep.
Bye.
And I think all of you see it now. All of this Blackthorn arcana woven into this building responds to him a little bit. There's almost like a faint sizzling. Like when he gets close, the sort of dark surface of like runes and inscriptions and patterns, it's like it suddenly starts to glow like orange and then red hot, and it sort of passes in your wake. Reginald Blackthorn, head of the Blackthorn clan, walks you all straight out of this building, and no one dares to get in his way. Auric, I'll let you decide. Have you met Reginald Blackthorn?
Briefly.
So I think maybe you were like a +1 at a social event or something. With the amount that you've been around and your sort of unusual background, you get the impression that Reginald has been sort of intentionally giving you space. Not avoiding you, but just trying not to like so he leads you all out of the building and kind of lets out like a it sounds like you all have had quite a bit of an adventure.
Gosh.
That is one way to put it.
And you do notice, even as you are walking, now that you're looking for it, Oswald is like rapid fire texting, like without breaking eye contact. And apparently, like large parts of this conversation have been going directly to someone. And Reginald kind of smirks and says, "Well, it wouldn't it wouldn't do to let them think that they can hold a Blackthorn family member for such a length of time. So hopefully we have quashed that. Well, I would surely like to ask some questions, but I have all the time in the world, and some of you look rather the worse for wear." Cyrus, you definitely catch this. Where everyone else has kind of not noticed Mort particularly, his eyes linger on Mort. Almost like he expects Mort to be there. And he sort of just gives like a little like nod of his head and says, "Well, I believe you all are perfectly capable of seeing your own way from here. Vela, of course, can call a car if needed. I wish you all a speedy recovery and perhaps a conversation soon." And he steps out, sort of wraps his cane, and is gone.
So wait, do you mean like he looks at a spot as though he expected Mort to be there?
No,
Or,
he
like,
looked.
at
He looked
Mort
at
saying,
Mort.
like, as if to say he expects Mort at the conversation.
No. He expected Mort to be a part of this and to be a part of like this group here.
Okay.
But he definitely seems to have some interest in Mort.
So like he knows that Mort is there.
Yes, and he also knows that Mort. There was some knowing eye contact that suggested that he knows that Mort is not just what he appears.
Right. Yes, I'm sure the Blackthorn family was read in, as it were.
Well, and they have their own sort of separate traditions, which would include Mort, as you are gathering. So here's what I want us to do at this point. My plan is that this is going to be one of our bigger time jumps. So, what do you all want to do immediately? And what are things you all would want to do over the next, depending on what all comes up, over the next like 3 to 6 months?
Well, immediately sleep.
Yeah.
But
Rest and recuperation is definitely had.
I think in the short term, probably checking up on the kids.
Keep your eye on them. Obviously, I want to check in at the restaurant, the bar.
Yeah.
I'm definitely curious about what the old hag said to me.
Which cryptic hag thing?
Give me a second.
Let me find my list of cryptic hag sayings.
Yep.
Oh yeah, she gave me her scarf.
Yeah, y'all never had to use them.
Yeah. Calls me a child of the light and says that I've been seen, something watches, something old, fetid, and dead.
Ah, yes.
Watches with one brilliant eye.
All right, what are other priorities? I want to try and hit things loosely chronologically so that we don't get like out of control having to rewind.
Yeah.
A journey of self-discovery.
Yeah, because you're
Wait, what?
no longer just Auric anymore.
Yeah, I think Cyrus is, if Mort is sticking around at all to try to get Mort, Alex, and Sana and himself all together to put some pieces together. But then also long term, think about some of the upgrades to lose. And I think potentially having the Blackthorns take a look at a couple of the items out of the palace and see about, I think we had said that might be possible for them to uncurse.
Yeah.
Right.
All right. So we'll kind of hit things in order here. So keeping up with the children turns out to be distressingly easy. Because within about 12 hours, it becomes the biggest media circus maybe since the first gate.
Yeah.
And it doesn't stop. There are interviews, there are public statements, there are there are official statements, then there are public statements from groups that have strong views on what happened, and they essentially become minor celebrities attached to this incredibly divisive occurrence. So the kids are easy to keep track of, but not in a good way.
Right.
So there are groups that hail it as the next modern medical miracle. There are a lot of groups that denounce both the current human politicians and the existing government, but especially the Fae Embassy, to the point where they actually have to have like magical wards, like pushed out a little ways from the building. Vandalism, even like not that it's a danger to the embassy, but people like throwing like like lit incendiaries towards the building, things like that. Bryn is not really appearing in public, and Ambassador Llewellyn is kind of on a he's on sort of a spin tour, but it is not going well. It is very hard to spin. That kind of resolves itself in some ways for you. You return to Luz. You've functionally only been gone for less than a day.
Right.
In some ways, things kind of settle back to normal. Woody has largely been holding down the fort. Caleb has been helping. Caleb has really filled in to a surprising degree over time. And things kind of are at an equilibrium there. Mort doesn't try to sort of bail. Mort easily allows you to sort of arrange this meeting, and he is a little miffed to find Alex and Sana using basically his favorite safe house as like a bachelor pad. It's wrecked, basically. It's gross. Not like structurally damaged, but just Mort is generally very meticulous and very organized, and he just sort of like walks in, looks around at all the like junk, and just like finds a different safe house to stay in. So he's in a different apartment nearby. But the meeting is scheduled. You all gather together. And there's a tangible resonance to all four of you being in the same room. And you can actually see... So Mort has kind of like healed up, sort of regained the nondescript form that you best know him in. But you finally learn to notice, now that you're looking for them, you sometimes catch Mort's scars coming and going. And it becomes very obvious when the three of you are in the room with him, because being the sort of pattern-minded person that he is, Cyrus, you put together that there are three specific scars on Mort that become more easily visible when the three of you are around. So you're gathered for this meeting. Did you have any location in mind?
Lose. I don't know.
I think Mort might be a little hesitant to use lose, not because of lose itself, but just because this almost has a feel of like a family conversation to it.
Mm-hmm. And Lose is a bit too public.
Yeah, I think in the absence of something specific, this is just around like a plain table in Mort's safe house.
Mm-hmm.
And it almost seems too plain. You have, Alex, the changeling spy who can take anyone's form and channels these magical blasts. You have Sana, who is getting passable with her modern common, and seems to drag the shadows in her wake. And sometimes the shadows form the silhouette of birds that separate and fly away. And of course, Cyrus himself, carrying the ill-omened blades, wearing the disguised, but the raven feather mantle, slayer of numerous fae and fiend and assorted magical creature at this point. And then, of course, Mort himself, sitting at this table. And in this sort of normal form, he looks smaller than you remember. Something of like the larger-than-life quality of Mort. You don't see it like you used to. But Mort is sitting at the table, and there's an awkward silence. And Mort looks at you and says, "So what do you want to know?"
I think Cyrus's first question is just like, so who are we?
Well, the who I think you know. Is the question you're looking for maybe what are you?
Yeah, or like, I guess both like the four of us kind of in concert and
So, a long, 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 long time ago, there was a place. A place that was ethereal and magical and raw. Only loosely moored to this material world. And a family of beings found this undeveloped place. And leaving behind the places they had known, they came and they became a part of this new land. It wasn't just that they lived there. They were embedded into the fabric of it. The magic of the place became their magic. And the place became their place. And they realized that this land
He's just Russell Boo Boo.
this land drew its power from another group of people. People who inhabited this material world. They touched it.
Russell apparently has his own version of the story that he thinks should be told instead of the official version.
I'm sure it's someone walking their dog.
I'm sure.
The land drew its power from this people. They weren't quite a part of it the same way, but something of their spirit touched the place. When they dreamed, when they imagined, when they thought. And the people in this raw, magical place saw that they could make their land more magical, that they could make themselves more magical by tying themselves and the land more closely to these beings who were empowering it. And to do that, they had to loosen a part of themselves. A part of who they were became flexible, just like the land. And when these mortal creatures dreamed and believed and imagined and told stories, the residents of this land would gain a portion of that power. And this was how the Tuatha became not quite gods. Those are something else. But patrons, totems, embodiments of aspects of that mortal life. War and art and death and blood, creation, all of it was tangled up together, and it made them strong. And they exerted that influence on these mortal people, which returned their belief, reinforced it, and it fed them. They became more and more powerful. But nothing lasts forever. Even for beings for whom time is a limited threat. A new group of people came, fleeing from something that had driven them out of their own land. And they saw this land full of magic and possibility and potential. And they decided that they would take it for themselves. My people we're not necessarily good in a moral sense. Death isn't good or bad. Life and blood and sacrifice and battle are not necessarily good or bad. We just were. We were the thing itself. But these new beings were small but many. They changed easily. They found ways to poison the stories, to change the minds of these mortal creatures, and thereby change this world full of magic. And a war was fought, and we lost. And our land was no longer our land. Our land became fairy. Something different. Not just a planted flag, but the nature of the land changed. Mystery and illusion and charm. It became a place of glamour, of funhouse reflections, strange and exaggerated, sometimes exciting, sometimes nightmarish, but something alien to us. And so we began to fade. Those of us that remained no longer had a land and the magic that came with it. But among my people, there is a queen. And my queen is beautiful and cold and majestic and terrible. And in some ways deeply petty is too small a word. Vengeance. She wanted to destroy the ones who had destroyed us. Even if it meant that our ghosts went screaming into the void, their task unfinished. She would spite the ones who had done this thing. So these mortals found themselves now at the mercies of these strange and erratic lords and ladies that their hearts and minds and imaginations had been bound up in. A human peasant has very little recourse against a sprite, much less an ogre. So my lady made a bargain of sorts. A sympathetic angel and a willing prince of mortals, and together they created something. The angel thought it was protection. The prince thought it was power. But my queen knew that it was poison. It was the spark that would start the fires of war between mortals and the lords and ladies who had claimed their hearts and minds. This power, this light, became the shield that would protect them, but also the sword that would let them dream of something bigger. And so my lady laughed as the human creatures and the Fae began to war. I think even she didn't understand what would happen. The sundering came and the worlds were broken. And I stayed. I went from being a knight, a commander, and I became a shadow. I would hold up this thing that had been built. And so I did for countless ages. The power that I have, the power that you have, it's not static. It diminishes or it grows. And when it grows too great, you will begin to change. You become less a person and more of an idea, an embodiment. And as I served in the shadows, and every day the people offered their little dreams to the ravens all across the city, I grew larger and larger. And so periodically I would have to set aside part of that power. I placed it in weapons, building an armory for the ages. I had descendants. Fragments of myself become something new, something of their own. And here he sort of looks at Sana. Then there was you two. Two broken parts. And I filled what was missing. I think he sort of trails off at this point and is just kind of like staring out the window. You notice it's a plain, not great apartment, but the window has a beautiful vista of the city. And you can see as it grows dark, from this neighborhood, you can see in the distance the tops of some of the buildings in Old Imperial. What else do you want to ask Mort?
So wait, so is Mort saying he built what we went into? That the Raven Palace is what he made?
He didn't build the palace, but several of the items that you've come into possession of, even the Great Raven itself, those are parts of Mort.
Okay. I think hearing Mort talk about the Sundering, Cyrus would also ask if Mort has any idea why the cats were after him, and if he thinks Lambton's play was about trying to foster more division, like the hag suggested.
Even after all this time, I still hate trying to unravel what these creatures do, how they think. They think in knots, and they bend the world to match. I think that Lambton was a tool. And in fact, I can say that with certainty, that it is no coincidence that the unseen stalker would place me in his hands. I think that it was to remove me from the board while other moves take place. I think it was also to perhaps grant Lambton further insight into how his power might inhabit humans. Whether for good or ill intentions, it's hard to say. But I do think that, as is not uncommon, the Stalker never plays a losing hand. He never plays just one strategy. They are multifaceted. They always play such that even if they lose in a dozen ways, they'll win in the way that's most important. The Stalker has no love for Lambton. And these changed ones will be a far better poison to the Stalker's real foes.
Okay.
Out of curiosity, do Lexi and Auric have any questions to pass on? Because you all would have had a bit of a lead up to this.
Yeah. To Mort, I don't know that I have any questions for Mort.
Yeah.
I mean, Cyrus, I think, is also definitely curious when Mort mentioned the angel. Like, is that something to do with Hero Light, or he's talking about something different entirely?
You think that this could very well be another side of the story of how Hero Light came into existence.
Okay.
And from your grasp of history, it absolutely tracks. The power that Lexi has is in a lot of ways similar to the light that is used by Solinus and Solinist figures, but it's different. There's something more aggressive and combative in it.
I guess Cyrus might ask if Mort has any other insight into the history of Luz.
That would actually be really cool if he does.
I think you mentioned some of the kind of like flashes that Luz gives every once in a while of much more ancient tableaus.
When that ancient, perhaps prince isn't even the right word. He was something like a warrior chieftain ruling over a few villages in a region. But when he returned from the brink of death, from the far places with the hero light, he called together all of his men for a feast. And they gathered in a field by a river. And at the feast, the spark of hero light passed from one to the other, and from them out to all the rest of humanity in the world. And a part of it marked that place forever. So, centuries later, when a distant, when Arlen, the distant ancestor of Bran, was founding a kingdom, he chose a spot that happened to be in a field by a river where a feast had once been held. And the first place that was built was, there's not quite a word for it today, but something like a tavern. And it was built in that place with the stones of that place. And such an establishment has stood there on that site ever since.
All right, let's see.
I guess if Cyrus is opening, obviously not there, but if Cyrus was opening the floor for any questions we might want to send along with him, does Mort know anything about this creepy lady in my head?
Yeah, I kind of figured that was the queen he was talking about.
I would
earlier,
like it
but-
explicitly said.
I'll say this. Unless you actively dissuade him, Mort definitely wants to have, like, an important conversation with you in particular soon.
Dun dun dun.
So unless you have, like, ducked him, that is, like, coming soon.
I think probably Orc doesn't have the presence of mind to try to duck him.
I will say this. I think since you've been back, it maybe took a couple days, but finally you noticed there are ravens following you everywhere. You have seen some in the past. They are never fewer than 3, but sometimes over a dozen ravens, always sort of setting up camp on buildings and outcroppings near wherever you are.
Murder follows me.
I mean,
Yeah.
they're kind of crows, you know.
Yeah, that's a
Murder
good point.
crows.
I think Cyrus would probably ask. Would at least ask about Oric and the whole true name business with Lambton. I don't know if I can't remember if Cyrus heard Mort call Oric Bran in that moment or not. But at least about the true name and the crown, and would probably phrase it something like, so is Oric like the 3 of us?
Yes and no. My lady created this power, and she saw it distributed amongst all of these mortals. But the power alone wasn't enough. humans and Fae had fought off and on for centuries and had never risen to the point that she wanted. There was a boy, a prince, who was born without something of that vital magic that keeps humans alive. He was in the line of Arlen, one of the first great kings of humans. He would be the heir of one of the great human empires. And if she did nothing, he would die. I don't know what... I don't truly know what possessed her in that moment, but she gave a part of herself the same way that I did for you and for Alex and for Sana. But I am a knight. I am the black cloud of ravens that flies above the battlefield. And she is the battlefield. She is war and death, the shedding of blood, the dark majesty of violence and conflict. What I gave you was a spark. A spark that you have nurtured and grown into a steady and thriving flame set in a hearth. What she gave him was the sun. And he became a dagger poised at the heart of Fairy. What your friend is, I'm not entirely certain yet. But some part of that is still in him.
Okay. At this point, I think this scene probably fades into like Cyrus turning to Alex and being like, "So, how's things with Sana been?" And it like fades into like at least semi more natural like family squabble around the table tableau.
It's very ominous at first. This extended conversation, because you've not gotten to have these conversations with Mort before.
Yeah.
You know that Sana seems to have had them in the past, and Alex seemed to have had to know a lot that you didn't. But slowly, some of that strange, profound, ominous darkness sort of pulls back a little bit from Mort. And eventually he even starts to half smile as he leans back in his chair, watching the three of you bicker and fight, and with the other eye occasionally turning and glancing out over the cityscape and the dark night beyond. So we will come back to this next week. Think of other sort of interlude things you are interested in. The big time jump will give us a little more time to watch things develop instead of living right on your own heels all the time. All right. Well, I'm going to get off of here, and I will kill the recording.
Recording stopped.
Kill the stream. Bye,
Bye,
Internet.
Internet.